on the lodestone and magnetic bodies, and on the great magnet, the Earth, by William Gilbert, published circa 1600 of the Common Era. Recording number 3, Book 1, Chapter 1. Writings of ancient and modern authors concerning the lodestone, various opinions and delusions. In former times, when philosophy, still crude and uncultured, was involved in the murkiness of errors and ignorance, a few of the virtues and properties of things were, it is true, known and understood. In the world of plants and herbs, all was confusion. Mining was underdeveloped, and mineralogy neglected. But when, by the genius and labors of many workers, certain things needful for man's use and welfare were brought to light and made known to others, reason and experience meanwhile adding a larger hope, then did mankind bring to search the forest, the plains, the mountains and precipices, the seas and the depths of the waters, and the inmost bowels of earth, and to investigate all things. And by good luck, at last the lodestone was found, as seems probable, by iron smelters or by miners in veins of iron ore. On being treated by the metallurgists, it quickly exhibited that strong, powerful attraction of iron, no latent nor obscure property, but one easily seen of all, one observed and commanded with many praises. And after it had come forth, as it were out of darkness, and out of deep dungeons, and been honored of men on account of its strong and marvelous attraction of iron, then many ancient philosophers and physicians discoursed of it, and briefly, but briefly only, made it matter of record, as for instance Plato in the Io, Aristotle only in his first book De Anima, likewise Theophrastus the Lesbian, Dioscorides, Gaius Plinius Secundus, Julius Solinus. These record only that the lodestone attracts iron. Its other properties were all hid. But lest the story of the lodestone should be jejune and too brief, to this one sole property then known was appended certain figments and falsehoods, which in the early time, no less than nowadays, were by precocious socialists and copyists dealt out to mankind to be swallowed. For example, they asserted that a lodestone rubbed with garlic does not attract iron, nor when it is in the presence of a diamond. The like of this is found in Pliny and in Ptolemy, Quadra Partitum, and errors have steadily been spread abroad and been accepted, even as evil and noxious plants ever have the most luxuriant growth down to our day, being propagated in the writings of many authors, to the end that their volumes might grow to the desired bulk, do write and copy all sorts about every so many things of which they know not for certain in the light of experience. Such fables about the lodestone even Georgius Agricola a man that has deserved well indeed of letters, has inserted as truthful history in his books De Natura Fossilium, putting his trust in other writings. Galen, in the 9th book of his De Simplicium Medicamentorum Facultatibus, recognizes its medicinal value and its natural power of attracting iron. In the 1st book of his De Naturalibus Facultatibus, but he knew not the cause, any more than Dioscorides before him, nor did he seek further. But his translator, Matthiolus, furbishes again the garlic and diamond story, and further brings in the fable of Mohammed's shrine having an arched roof of magnets, so that the people might be fooled by the trick of the coffin suspended in air, as though 'twere some divine miracle. But this is shown to be false by the reports of travelers. Pliny, however, records that the architect Chinocrates began to put an arched roof of lodestone on the temple of Arsinoe at Alexandria, so that her effigy in iron might seem to be suspended in air. In the meantime, the architect died, as also Ptolemy, who had ordered the work to be done in honor of his sister. But little has been written by the ancients about the causes of the attraction of iron. Some trifling remarks of Lucretius and others are extant. Other authors barely make slight mention of the attraction of iron. All these are berated by Cardan for being so heedless and indifferent about so notable a matter, so broad a field of philosophizing, and for not giving a fuller account or a more developed philosophy. Yet Cardan himself, in his ponderous volumes, has handed down to posterity beyond a few commonplaces and quotations from other writers and false discoveries, naught that is worthy of a philosopher. Of later authors, some tell only of its efficacy in medicine, as Antonius Musa Brasivulus, Baptista Montanus, Amatus Lusitanus, as did before them Oribasius in Book 13 of De Facultate Metallicorum, Avicenna, Ibn Sina, Serapio Moretanus, Abu Hale Abbas, Hali Abbas, Santos de Ordonis, Petrus Aponisis, Marcellus Arnaldus. Only a few points touching the lodestone are very briefly mentioned by Morbodius Gallus Albertus, Matthias Silvaticus, Hermolaus Barbatus, Camillus Leonhardus, Cornelius Agrippa, Fallopius Johannes Langius, Cardinal de Cusa, Hannibal Rosarius Caliber. By all these the subject is handled in the most careless way, while they repeat only the figments and ravings of others. Matthiolus compares the attractive virtues of the lodestone, which pass through iron, to the mischief of the torpedo, whose poison passes through bodies and spreads in an occult way. Willielmus Putianus, in his Ratio Purgantium Medicamentorum, discusses the lodestone briefly and crudely. Thomas Erastus, knowing naught of the nature of the lodestone, draws from its weak arguments against Paracelsus. Georgius Agricola, like Incelius and other writers on metals, simply describes it, Alexander Aphrodisius, in his Plodomata, judges the question of the lodestone to be incomparable of explication. Lucretius Carus, the Epicurean poet, deems the attraction to be due to this, that as there is from all things an efflux of minutest bodies, so there is from iron efflux of atoms into the space betwixt the iron and the lodestone, a space emptied of air by the lodestone's atoms, seeds. And when these begin to return to the lodestone, the iron follows, the corpuscles being entangled with each other. Something similar is said by Johannes Kepler, following Plutarch. Thomas Aquinas, in his Physica, Book 7, treating briefly of the lodestone, gets at the nature of it fairly well. With his godlike and perspicacious mind, he would have developed many a point had he been acquainted with magnetic experiments. Plato holds the magnetic virtue to be divine, but when, some 300 or 400 years ago, the magnetic movement to the north and the south was discovered or recognized anew, many learned men, each according to his own gifts, strove to honor with admiration and praise, or to explain with feeble reasoning a property so curious and so necessary for the use of mankind. Of more recent authors, very few have striven to discover the cause of this direction and movement to north and south, and to understand this so great miracle of nature and lay it open to others. But they wasted oil and labor, because, not being practical in the research of objects in nature, being acquainted only with books, being led astray by certain erroneous physical systems, and having made no magnetical experiments, they constructed certain ratiocinations on a basis of mere opinions, and old womanishly dreamt the things that were not. Marsilius Ficinus choose the cud of ancient opinions, and to give the reason of the magnetic direction seeks its cause in the constellation Ursa. In the lodestone, says he, the potency of Ursa prevails, and hence it is transferred into the iron. Paracelsus declares that there are stars which, gifted with the lodestone's power, do attract themselves iron. Levinus Limnius describes and praises the mariner's compass, and on certain grounds infers its antiquity. He does not divulge the hidden miracle which he makes profession to know. The people of Melfi, in the kingdom of Naples, first 'tis said constructed a mariner's compass, and, as Flavius Blondus says, the townsmen do not without reason boast. They were so taught by one Johannes Goya, a fellow citizen, in the year 1300. This town is the kingdom of Naples, not far from Salerno and near the promontory of Minerva. The sovereignty of the place was conferred by Charles V on Andrea Doria, the great naval commander, in recognition of his splendid achievements, and that nothing ever has been contrived by the art of man, nor anything been of great advantage to the human race, than the mariner's compass is certain. But many infer from ancient writings and from certain arguments and conjectures that the compass was discovered earlier and received among the arts of navigation. Knowledge of the mariner's compass appears to have been brought into Italy by the Venetian Paulum Venetum Marco Polo, who, about the year 1260, learned the art of the compass in China. Still, I do not want to strip the Melfitani of so great an honor, seeing that by them compasses were first commonly made in Mediterranean lands. Corupaius ascribes the invention to Cimbri, or Teutons, on the grounds that the 32 names of the winds inscribed on the compass are pronounced in German by all mariners, whether they be British or Spaniards or Frenchmen, but the Italians give them names in their own vernacular. Some think that Solomon, king of Judea, was acquainted with the compass and taught the use of it to his pilots for their long voyages when they brought from the western Indies such a quantity of gold. Hence Arias Montanus holds that the region in Peru that abound in gold got their name from the Hebrew word Baruaim. But it is more probable that the gold came from the coast of Lower Ethiopia, or, as others declare, from the region called Sifala. The story seems less true for the reason that the Phoenicians, next neighbors of Judea, most skillful navigators in early times, whose talents, labor, and counsel Solomon employed in building ships and in his expeditions as well as in other ways, were ignorant of magnetic aids, of the use of the mariner's compass. For were it used by them, doubtless the Greeks and the Italians and all the barbarians would have known of a thing so necessary and so celebrated through common use. Nor would things famous most easily known and of the highest necessity ever perish in oblivion. On the contrary, the knowledge would have been handed on to posterity, or some memorial in writing would survive. Sebastian Cabot first discovered that the magnetized iron needle varied. Gonzalez Oviedo first made mention in his history that in the meridian of the Azores there is no variation. Jean-François Fresnel, in his book De Abditus Rerum Causis, says that in the lodestone is a hidden and obtuse cause. Elsewhere he says this cause is celestial, and he does but explain the unknown by the more unknown. This search after hidden causes is something ignorant, beggarly, and resultless. The ingenious Fracastorius, a philosopher of no common stamp, asks what gives direction to the lodestone needle, and imagines the existence of Hyperborean magnetic mountains attracting objects of magnetic iron. This opinion in some degree accepted by others also. Many authors follow in their writings, their geographical maps, their marine charts, and their descriptions of the globe, dreaming, imagining to themselves the existence of magnetic poles and mighty cliffs, apart from the Earth's poles, of date 200 years or more earlier than Fracastorius, is a small work attributed to one Petros Peregrinus, a pretty erudite book considering the time. Many believe it owes its origin to the opinions of Roger Bacon, Englishman of Oxford. In this work, the arguments touching the magnetic direction are drawn from the celestial poles and from the heaven itself. From this book of Petros Peregrinus, Johannes Tesner Hannonius extracted the matter of a little volume which he published for new. Cardan makes much of the star in the tale of Ursa Major. The cause of variation he assigns to its rising, thinking that variation is always certain at the rising of the star, but the difference of variation for change of locality and the mutations in many places, mutations that even in the southern regions are irregular, preclude this exclusive dominance of one star at its northern rising. The College of Coimbra seeks the cause in some region of the heavens nigh to the pole. Scaliger, in the 131st of his Exercitationes on Cardan's work De Subtilitate, brings in a celestial cause to himself unknown, in terrestrial lodestones that have nowhere been discovered, and seeks the cause not in the siderite mountains, but in that force which formed them, to wit, in the part of the heavens which overhangs that northern point. This opinion that learned author dresses in abundant verbiage, and crowns with many subtile observations in the margin. But his reasons are not so subtle. Martinus Cortesius holds that the seat of the attraction is beyond the poles, and that it is the heavens in motion. One Bessard, a Frenchman, studies the poles of the zodiac, but to as little purpose. Jacobus Servetus of Paris, after quoting a few observations of others, fashions new errors about lodestones of different regions, being different in direction, as also about the eastern and western parts of a lodestone. Robert Norman, an Englishman, posits a point in place toward which the magnet looks. But whereto it is not drawn, toward which magnetized iron, according to him, is collimated, but which does not attract it. Franciscus Maurolicus discusses a few problems regarding the lodestone. Adopting the current opinions of others, he believes that the variation is caused by a certain magnetic island, mentioned by Olus Magnus, Josephus Costa, knowing nothing whatever of the object, nevertheless pours out empty words about the lodestone. Livio Sanuto, in his geography, written in Italian, discourses at length of the prime magnetic meridian, of the magnetic poles, whether they are terrestrial or celestial, treats also of the instrument for finding the longitude, but as he does not understand the nature of the lodestone, he does but add errors and obscurities to his otherwise excellent treatise. Fortunius Affetatus has some rather silly philosophizing about attraction of iron and the turning toward the poles. Very recently, Baptista Porta, a philosopher of no ordinary note, makes the 7th book of his Magia Naturalis a very storehouse and repertory of magnetic wonders. But he knows little about the movements of the lodestone, and never has seen much of them. Much of what he has learned about its obvious properties, either from Messer Paolo the Venetian, or through his own studies, is not very accurately noted and observed. The book is full of most erroneous experiments, as will appear in fitting place. Still, I hold him worthy of praise, for that he essayed so great a task, even as he has essayed many another task, and successfully too, and with no inconsiderable results, in that he has given occasion for further researches. All these philosophers, our predecessors, discoursing of attraction on the basis of a few vague and indecisive experiments, and of reasonings from the recondite causes of things, and reckoning among the causes of the direction of the magnet, a region of the sky, celestial poles, stars, asterisms, are mountains, cliffs, vacant space, atoms, attractional or collimational regions beyond the heavens, and other like unproved paradoxes, are worldwide astray from the truth and are blindly wandering. But we do not propose just now to overturn with arguments either these, their errors and impotent reasonings, or the other many fables about the lodestone, or the fairy tales of mountebanks and storytellers, as, for example, the questions raised by Franciscus Ruiz about the lodestone, whether it is an imposture of cacodemons, or the assertion that a lodestone placed unawares under the head of a sleeping woman drives her out of the bed if she be an adulteress, or that by its fume and vapor the lodestone is of use to thieves, as though the stone were by nature given to promote thefts, or that it withdraws bolts and opens locks, as Serapio insanely imagines, or that iron held by a lodestone's attraction, being placed in a balance, adds naught to the weight of the lodestone, as though the weight of the iron were absorbed by the virtue of the lodestone. Or that, as Serapio and the Moors report, there are in Indian seas certain sharp-pointed rocks abounding in lodestone, that which draw every nail out of ships that land alongside them and hold the vessels. This story Oleus Magnus does not fail to recite. He tells of mountains in the north possessing such power of attraction that ships have to be constructed with wooden pegs, so that as they sail by the magnetic cliffs, there be no iron nails to draw out. Nor will we take the trouble to refute such stories as that a white lodestone may be used as a filter, or that, as Abu Hali Abbas rashly asserts, when held in the hand it cures pains of the feet and cramps, or that, as Pictorius sings, it gives one favor and acceptance with princes, or makes one eloquent. That, as Albertus Magnus says, there are two species of lodestones, one pointing north, the other south. Or that iron is directed toward the northern stars by a force communicated from the polar stars, even as plants like the sunflower follow the sun, or as the astrologer Lucas Gauricus held that beneath the tail of Ursa Major is a lodestone. Lucas further assigns the lodestone, as the sardonyx and the onyx, to the planet Saturn, but also to Mars with the diamond, jasper, and ruby, so that the lodestone, according to him, is ruled by two planets. Further, Lucas says that the lodestone belongs to the sign Virgo. And with the mathematical erudition, does he cover any similar disgraceful stupidities? Gaudentius Merula advises that on a lodestone be graven the image of a bear when the moon looks to the north, so that being suspended by an iron thread it may win the virtue of the celestial bear. Vincenus writes, and Merula copies, that the lodestone draws iron and makes it point north, because it is of higher order than iron in the bear. Others tell that in daytime the lodestone possesses the power of attracting iron, but that at night this power is feeble, or rather null. Rulius, Ruellius, writes that the lodestone's force, when failing or dulled, is restored by the blood of a buck. It has been said that a buck's blood frees the magnet from the diamond sorcery, giving back its lost power when the magnet is bathed in blood. This because of the variance between blood and the diamond. Arnoldus de Villanova fancies that the lodestone frees women from witchcraft and puts demons to flight. Marbaudeus, a Frenchman, fugleman of vain imaginings, says that it can make husbands agreeable to wives, and may restore wives to their husbands. Caius Calcagninus, in his Relationes, says that a magnet pickled with salt of the sucking fish has the power of picking up a piece of gold from the bottom of the deepest well. In such like follies and fables do philosophers of the vulgar sort take delight, which such like do they cram readers a hungered for things abstruse, and every ignorant gapper for nonsense. But when the nature of the lodestone shall have been in the discourse following disclosed, and shall have been by our labors and experiments tested, then will the hidden and recondite but real causes of this great effect be brought forward, proven, shown, demonstrated. Then too will all darkness vanish. Every smallest root of error, being plucked up, will be cast away and will be neglected, and the foundations of a grand magnetic science, being laid, will appear anew, so that high intellects may be no more deluded by vain opinions. There are other learned men who, on long sea voyages, have observed the differences of magnetic variation, as that most accomplished scholar, Thomas Harriot, Robert Hughes, Edward Wright, Abraham Kendall, all Englishmen. Others have invented and published magnetic instruments and ready methods of observing, necessary for mariners and those who make long voyages, as William Burrough in his little work The Variation of the Compass, William Barlow in his supplement, Robert Norman in his New Attractive. The same Robert Norman, skilled navigator and ingenious artificer, who first discovered the dip of the magnetic needle. Many others I pass by of purpose, Frenchmen, Germans, and Spaniards of recent time, who in their writings mostly compose in their vernacular languages, either misuse the teachings of others, and like furbishers, send forth ancient things dressed with new names and tricked in an apparel of new words, as in prostitutes' finery, or who publish things not even worthy of record, who, pilfering some book, grasp for themselves from other authors, and go a-begging for some patron, or go a-fishing among the inexperienced and the young for a reputation, who seem to transmit from hand to hand, as it were, erroneous teachings in every science, and out of their own stored now and again to add somewhat of error.